Not every relic is placed in a museum. Not every ruin is marked on a map. Some are buried by intention. Unspoken, unexplored, and unexplained. There are moments in history, sudden, sharp, unyielding, where humanity brushes against something that violates its sense of time. A ruin that predates the civilization that supposedly built it. A discovery that hints at ancient technologies we still can't recreate. And in these moments, science often turns away. Scholars will rewrite dates. Archaeologists will close sites. Institutions will call anomalies frauds. But the earth does not lie. The stones do not care what stories we accept. Today, we journey through 5 discoveries that linger in the shadows of credibility, their existence quietly recorded, their mysteries emphatically ignored. These are not hoaxes. They are there. But science chooses not to see them. Let's begin with a staircase that leads deeper than time, carved in a place no hands should have reached. Hashtag segment 1, the Klerksdorp spheres, ancient precision from the prehistoric Earth. Hashtag site description. In South Africa's Ottosdal region, embedded in layers of pyrophyllite rock estimated to be 2.8 to 3 billion years old, miners stumbled across strange metallic spheres. The spheres range from 0.5 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Some boast perfect geometric shape. Others are engraved with equidistant grooves running around their entire circumference. They are called the Klerksdorp spheres, smooth, metallic, and precise. Made of hematite or a mixture of metals with nickel alloys. Their shell is harder than steel, some are perfectly balanced and symmetrical. Hundreds have been found. None show tool marks. None have corroded. Hashtag mainstream understanding. Geologists, cautious and bound by academic rigor, attribute the spheres to natural processes. They are concretions, they say. Crystal growth under constrained conditions over geological time. But no known natural process explains the symmetries. How could molten minerals, unaided by pressure tools or spinning force, create such a defined, artificial groove, without deviation? Hashtag what doesn't add up. Some spheres spin independently inside their casing when placed on flat surfaces, behavior unexplained by geology. Electron microscopy reveals uniform structure inconsistent with random formation. They predate not only humanity, but complex life, by over 1 billion years. Who could have made something so precise, when there was no one to make it? Or what were these objects for? Hashtag segment 2, the Sahama lines, the forgotten web across the Andes. Hashtag site description. In the highlands of Bolivia, across a desolate plateau surrounding the extinct Sahama volcano, thousands of ruler straight lines crisscross the land for miles. Some are over 10 miles long. Others overlap but never deviate. Carved shallowly into desert soil, the Sahama lines dwarf even Peru's more famous Nazca lines in both scale and mystery. They go nowhere. They do nothing. They remain, straight and untouched, after hundreds, perhaps thousands, of years. We don't know who carved them. Or why. Hashtag mainstream understanding. Many scholars suggest they were simple footpaths connecting sacred sites. Functional more than symbolic. But aerial interpretations contradict this. Their lengths and orientations are too deliberate, their build too labor-intensive. Entire populations would be needed to draw a single line. There's no sign of food stations, housing, or accompanying culture around vast stretches of line work. No markings. No ceremonies. Just deliberate design. Hashtag what doesn't add up. These lines cross uneven terrain as though ignoring physics, always straight, never deviating. Tens of thousands of perfectly straight paths, forming geometric connections visible only from the sky. Some align with subterranean aquifers, as if guided by radar or unseen knowledge. who walked hundreds of miles across mountains to etch invisible lines, for no one on the ground to ever see. Unless they weren't on the ground. Hashtag segment 3, The Great Zimbabwe, a civilization out of place. Hashtag site description. Rising from the savannah like a ruined memory stands the Great Zimbabwe, an elaborate stone city with sweeping walls, complex towers, and granular conical structures. It wasn't discovered by Western explorers until the 19th century. By then, native African oral traditions described the site as a royal capital, of a people older than memory. Yet, when Europeans uncovered it, they refused to believe it. Hashtag mainstream understanding. Some archaeologists now accept that the Shona people built Great Zimbabwe in the 9th to 12th centuries CE, but this attribution is still challenged, subtly and politically. Early excavators destroyed large parts of the complex, looking for evidence of Phoenician, Arabic, or even Hebrew founders. Its walls, dry-fitted without mortar, stand for centuries, shaped by mathematical precision and solar alignment long before Western technological frameworks arrived. Hashtag what doesn't add up. No other known Shona-era site rivals its complexity. The skill needed suggests long-standing architectural evolution, yet there's no record of that evolution elsewhere. It emerged fully formed and still defies consistent dating. Was this built by ancestors of the Shona? Or did they inherit something left by a vanished strain of African civilization, so advanced, it made Europeans question history itself? Hashtag segment 4, The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, the underground frequency chamber. Hashtag site description. Malta, 6,000 years ago. Carved directly into bedrock lies the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, a 3-level subterranean temple that, even now, defies architectural logic. One of its chambers, the so-called Oracle Room, amplifies voice to levels that affect brain activity. Frequencies produced inside it range between 70 to 114 Hz, shown to influence human consciousness, hormone production, and spatial awareness in lab studies. Stone carvings here ripple like interiors of seashells. Rounded geometry mimics internal acoustic enhancers found today in theaters and concert halls. How did people in 4000 BCE understand these principles? Hashtag mainstream understanding. Malta's megalithic temples are typically attributed to Neolithic builders. But those explanations shrink beneath the precision in the hypogeum. Traditional tools of the age, deer antlers and stone axes, would not have allowed for this architecture. No soot marks indicate torch lighting, yet the passages twist and travel deep underground. Even stranger, most of the skeletal remains unearthed here were not typical humans. Their skulls were elongated. Naturally, not through binding. Hashtag what doesn't add up. Thousands of human remains disappeared during mid-20th century excavations. Only select archaeologists were allowed to study acoustics, and their findings remain unpublished. Folklore tells of people who entered its depths and were never seen again. Is the hypogeum a tomb? A temple? Or a machine? Hashtag segment 5, The Dropa Stones, Messages from the Sky. Hashtag site description. In the Bayan Har Mountains near Tibet, in 1938, a Chinese expedition led by Professor Chi Pu Ti stumbled into a cave complex filled with tiny humanoid skeletons and 716 circular stone discs, like prehistoric records. The artifacts quickly gained a name, the Dropa stones. Spiraling around the discs are microscopic hieroglyphic markings, inscriptions so fine, they can only be seen using magnification. When decoded, these messages speak of a crashed spacecraft, a people from another world, and their sorrow at never returning home. Hashtag mainstream understanding. Chinese universities initially published limited reports, then silenced them. No museum displays the stones. Many researchers who tried to follow the story disappeared from the academic record. Western institutions dismissed it out of hand, the story too strange, too uncomfortable. And yet, eyewitnesses remember. ####, what doesn't add up? The disks demonstrated unnatural electromagnetic properties under lab conditions. The myth of sky people aligns with ancient Tibetan Yakmak legends, beings who fell from between the stars, too frail for our gravity, seeking peace, not conquest. No one can find where the stones went. Not even China's own archaeologists. Did the Dropa